This is Personal Injury Court.
Good day, everyone. This is the matter of Orlando versus Martin. Mr. Orlando, it's my understanding that you are suing Miss Martin for severe injuries that you received while a passenger on her boat. You're asking this court to award you past medical expenses of $75,000, future medical expenses of $20,000, pain and suffering of $300,000 for a total award of $395,000. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, Miss Martin, you believe that had Mr. Orlando followed the safety rules that you gave him, he never would have been injured and you all wouldn't be here in court today. True?
Yes, Your Honor.
Well, let's get into the legal sauce. What led you up to the boat ride?
Well, Your Honor, me and Mark have been together for 10 years. We've been married for 5. We met in college, so it's like your standard love story. We were also fortunate enough to actually meet 5 really good friends in college as well. Every year we go on a trip together to kind of recharge.
So this is a big deal.
Yeah, it's a big, every year we turn up. So we decided to go fishing. I looked online and I found the Lorelei, which Nancy is the captain of. So we hired her to charter our boat to go fishing.
That's right up my alley, the
Right.
fishing. I've been fishing since I was 4 years old. I will fish in a ditch.
Good.
It's great stuff. Miss Martin, tell me about your boat.
It's called the Lorelei. It's a 58-foot boat. It has 2 Cummins 450 horsepower engines, diesel engines on it. It's pretty fast.
How'd you come to know about boats and operating boats?
Actually, Your Honor, I was in the Navy for 22 years.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. I obtained the rank of an 06, which is a senior officer, a captain. My dad taught me to fish like you. When I was 4 years old, I was out fishing with him all the time. It's my passion. So I knew, like 5 years before retirement, that I was going to come home and open up a charter fishing business.
Tell me about your fishing boat business. What do you do?
I take people out on charters. We have a manifest list who lists all
That's
of our
the real
passengers.
deal there.
There you go. That's it.
And that's what you do? You go out and troll for the big fish?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I know
Okay.
where all the sweet spots are.
So tell me what happened.
So we were winding down. I was actually in a really, really great mood because I had just caught the biggest fish. So I was actually really excited. I had a bunch of adrenaline. We were getting ready to dock. My buddy Carlos was actually on the dock because he stayed back. He was a little bit hungover from the night before because
Yeah, fishing and drinking are like kissing cousins.
yeah, she screamed out, "Welcome home." I assumed that was what we were, at that point we were done. We stopped. There was only like an 18-inch gap, and I'm pretty athletic. I figured I can clear that, no problem. As I get ready to jump, she violently throws the boat in reverse, causing me to lose my footing. At that point, I smashed into the pylon on the dock, and at that point, I was underwater. I was afraid for my life because I felt weak. I could feel the air leaving my body. And the crazy thing was, she actually continued to put the boat in reverse. It wasn't until, she heard the screams of my wife screaming, the other patrons on the boat were actually distraught, that I actually, I had to pull myself out of the water in pain.
Now, Mr. Orlando, you submitted to this court an animation. I want you to go to the plasma screen and take me through this so I know exactly how this happened. Okay, this is how the dock is configured that day?
Correct.
All right, now take me through this.
So basically, this is the dock, and my buddy Carlos was about in this area. I'm sorry, Judge. And this is the pylon that I hit right here.
Okay.
So as she was pulling in, like I said, we were all winding down, getting ready to get off the boat. She yelled, "Welcome home" at this point, to which I jumped, and then she violently threw the boat in reverse. At this point, that's when I hit the pylon.
So what happened first, the jump or the boat going in reverse?
It was kind of simultaneous because the moment I got ready to jump, that's the reason why I smacked into this pylon, because I lost my footing.
Mr. Orlando, you can return to the podium.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Miss Martin, do you remember this day?
Yes, sir.
What happened out there?
I did have to come around those 2 boats and put it into that slip, which I was trying to do.
Had you done that before, put your boat in that slip?
Oh, sir, many, many, many times. I was backing up the boat, and I heard one of my crew members yell, "Man overboard." I faced the bow of the boat, so I knew that no one fell off the front, and so I did not see what happened. So immediately I turned off my engines. I turned it over to my first mate. I ran down the steps, ran to the back of the boat, and Mr. Orlando was pulling himself up onto the dock at that time.
Did you realize at that point whether or not he had been injured?
I went directly over the dock and I asked him, I said, "Are you okay? Let's call the EMTs."
She was not considerate at all,
Oh,
Your Honor.
Your Honor.
No, she wasn't.
You were
Well, what do you remember?
You did not
Talk to
come
me, lady.
across.
Talk to me.
She doesn't understand how traumatic this was. I had to stay on this boat and watch my husband almost drown. He was under the water. She did not stop immediately. She was still up there doing her captain thing or whatever. I don't really think she's a captain anyway. But anyhow, she stayed there and I had to watch my husband. I couldn't get to him. He had to pull himself up.
You must have been pretty helpless.
Yes, I mean, I was scared. This is the love of my life. Everything flashed before my eyes.
Oh,
like, she
please.
doesn't
He
understand.
pulled himself up on the dock, and I asked him, "Are you okay?" And he said he was fine, and he got
My
up and
husband
walked
could have
off and got
died.
on the
Do
back
you
of the
care about
scooter.
that at all? That my husband could have died?
That's true.
Talk to
Pure
me, lady.
negligence.
He
Talk to
could
me.
have. He could have been killed.
Miss Martin, how's this kind of thing happen?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I start out my my cruises every time with the same scenario. I always tell them, "Welcome aboard." I tell them that I hope they remember their sunscreen, their hats, their Dramamine, that they did not drink too much the night before. I also tell them I have a few safety rules. The rules are keep your limbs inside the boat. Whenever the boat is in motion, you must remain seated. The only time that you can get up is when the boat is tied to the dock.
Mr. Orlando, Mrs. Orlando, if Miss Martin goes through this routine every time, do you all remember this happening when you embarked on this boat?
I don't recall hearing any of this information being
No safety
relayed.
rules? You didn't hear any of
We
them?
had the safety meeting, but it was more like a safety briefing. It lasted no more than 5 minutes.
So the main safety rule, though, that you point out,
It's to remain seated while the boat is in motion.
now y'all
It
understood
is
that,
not
though,
tied
right?
up.
I didn't hear that at all.
Yeah,
Well,
the only
did
thing-
common sense kick in that
the
maybe you
only
sit down
thing
while the
that
boat's
she-
moving?
The only thing that
signed
she
a
told-
waiver.
Your Honor.
This is your boat. You put it in the slip. These folks are in your care. Bad injuries. Why wouldn't this be your fault?
Because he was reckless, Your Honor. The
Reckless?
boat was not tied up. The gangplank
That's
had
not
not
called
been
reckless.
lowered for him to get off the boat. We had not given them disembarking instructions, and they signed a waiver stating that
you all
knew
remember
what my
signing a
rules
waiver?
were.
I don't remember signing a waiver at all, Your Honor.
All right,
Have it
Sheriff
right
Matt,
here.
will you get the waiver? Let's look at it.
Please do.
Your Honor.
Let me look at it first. All right, it says boat travel waiver. I see it says Nicole Orlando and Mark Orlando. And both of y'all signed it, right?
I didn't sign it. I didn't sign it at all. I wasn't even aware of a boat travel.
Well, how'd
waiver.
your signature get on here?
Your Honor, that's not my signature.
That's not your
That
signature?
is not my signature.
How did Mark Orlando and somebody's signature get on here?
Well, my wife signs for me very often. I mean, I don't know if you're married, but I'm pretty sure you know that when
Wow.
you become married, you're one.
Well, you know,
Wow.
that's an interesting legal point.
Okay.
Under the law, your wife can, under certain circumstances, sign for you. It's called a parent agency,
Right.
or a parent authority. Because of your marital relationship, people looking at her, knowing she's your wife, they can assume safely and lawfully that she will sign on your behalf.
Right.
You all are asking this court to give you $300,000 for pain and suffering. That's a lot of money. Tell me about the pain and suffering.
He was able to run marathons. He was able to continue his personal fitness program. Now he's not able to do that. As far as us being able to provide for our family, we can't do that anymore.
You're asking this court to award you $75,000 for your past medicals and $20,000 for future medicals.
Right.
Tell me about your injuries.
3 broken ribs, cuts and abrasions. I've received actual collapsed lung on my left side. And it's very painful to deal with. It prevents me from doing just about everything.
So to further understand the nature of your injuries, this court has consulted Dr. Frida McCrae Fisher. Sheriff Matt, will you get Dr. McCrae Fisher?
Yes, Your Honor.
Good morning, doctor.
Good morning.
Doctor, can you explain what a collapsed lung is?
In the case of a rib fracture, if it punctures a hole in that lung, you get a collapsed lung. It's like puncturing and deflating a balloon, and you get a pneumothorax.
The pneumothorax is the fancy medical word for a collapsed lung.
Or a collapsed lung.
Well, how do you treat a pneumothorax?
You have to get this air out of the space and inflate the lung. And a needle would be inserted in between the ribs, into the chest wall, and you literally suck the air out of the chest wall.
And the lung then inflates?
It does after you go ahead and put a chest tube in. The chest tube is attached to a box which has suction. So then you're sucking out the air, the blood sometimes, and different fluid. And you keep this chest tube in until this collapsed lung reinflates into a normal lung.
How does a puncture of the lung affect the lung long term?
When this space has been violated, you are more likely to get a recurrent collapsed lung.
Thank you, doctor. You are released from testimony. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
You do understand Miss Martin's side, that you're the one that jumped off her boat.
I could completely understand if she had not been reckless herself throughout the entire boat trip.
So she was doing reckless things during the fishing
She thought she was
expedition?
Evel Knievel on water. That's what she thought she was.
Now, y'all do know you're talking about a Navy veteran, right?
Yeah, well, she doesn't act like it.
I don't trust her nautical
At
skills
all.
at all.
And I also have evidence of just how negligent the defendant is.
And
She's
what evidence is that?
Well, actually, it's a speeding ticket. This so-called captain has had a speeding ticket and careless driving for the boat.
Sheriff Matt, will you get the documents from Miss Orlando?
So her 22 years of experience, I don't think so.
Like I said, Your Honor, I don't trust.
Well, let's look at what you got here. All right, so you've got one document that's boating violation notice. It says Nancy Martin, it's even your boat, Lorelei, July 17th, careless operation, speeding in restricted zone. They even fined you, some pretty stiff fines. Do you remember this, Miss Martin?
Yes, Your Honor. And the circumstances of that day, it was late afternoon. I was taking my family out for a cruise, and there was a boat that was speeding toward us. I don't know if he had been drinking or what, but he did not look like he was going to stop. So yes, I gunned my engines.
Were you wrong?
Yes, sir, I was in the wrong. I take full responsibility for that. I paid my fine. They did not restrict my license. It is the only infraction I've ever got in my years in the military or as a civilian.
Let me give you a legal lesson. While this is informative to me as to incidents in the past, these past incidents don't necessarily determine someone's fault in the case today. It lets me see what prior habits are. But because you were a bad driver on a day before today doesn't make you a bad driver today. I appreciate you giving this to me, but it's just one piece of the justice puzzle. Folks, I think I have heard enough. I'm ready to render my decision. Folks, in every personal injury case, the plaintiff has to prove three things. You, Mr. Orlando, have to prove that Miss Martin was wrong and that her wrong caused your injuries and other harm that you seek compensation for. Here, you've put up evidence that Miss Martin was operating the boat crazy out there during the trip, that when you get into the slip, she says, "Welcome home." You think that means you've stopped and you feel the boat stop. But just as you're about to jump, she slams it in reverse and you jump and hit the pylon, and now you and your family's lives have been changed, and you want this court to hold her accountable.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Martin, you believe that had he simply paid attention during the safety meeting, he would have known he should stay seated until the boat stops and he's given command to exit the boat. Had he followed the safety rules, he wouldn't have gotten hurt. You believe his injuries are because he jumped off too soon, took too big of a chance, and this is his fault.
Yes.
Well, this case kind of shines light on two things. One is the importance of safety rules. Here, you all signed, whether your wife signed for you or you knew she was signing, you all were given an ample opportunity to know the safety rules. Now, safety rules are important because they inform us as to how we take care of ourselves, which is the second legal principle. That is personal safety. The law starts with the person. You have a responsibility to care for yourself, to act reasonably, to not take unreasonable risk. Here, the evidence is, even if Miss Martin did put this boat in reverse, you already were unsafe trying to jump. You jumped to your peril and caused your own injuries. The evidence in this case commands me to find against you, and in your favor, Miss Martin, I find for the defendant. That's my final verdict, and this matter is adjourned. Our attorneys across America just viewed this case for the first time. Let's hear what Hoyt Tessner has to say.
A ship's captain is responsible for the safe operation of the boat and the care of the passengers. However, we all have a duty to act in a reasonable manner. Captain Martin had not announced that it was clear to disembark because she had not fully docked. Mr. Orlando tried to jump to the dock from a moving boat, assumed the risk, and collapsed his own lung.